My boss's son laughed at me every day. He called me invisible. Just a maid. I swallowed the insults in silence, until life took a turn. One day, he discovered that only I could help him avoid being expelled from school. Ethan is the kind of kid who walks into a room and thinks the lights are on because of him. 16 years old, his cap is askew, his expensive sneakers squeaking on the marble as if trying to attract attention. He lives with me, with me working, in a mansion in the Los Angeles hills, with floor-to-ceiling glass windows and a garden that looks like a green carpet. He wakes up late, goes downstairs on his cell phone, and talks loudly, as if the house were a stage. "Mom, where's my UCLA sweatshirt?" he calls from the stairs. "It's in your closet, third shelf," Mrs. Miller replies, without looking up. He laughs at the way I organize the silverware, laughs at my blue uniform, laughs when he sees me kneeling near the baseboard. As he passes me, he throws the words like a paper ball. "Good morning, Miss Mop. Just sweeping up dreams today." "Good morning, Ethan," I say, taking a deep breath. At school, he's popular. He arrives in his dad's Tesla, sunglasses on, headphones around his neck. At home, he practices in the backyard, shooting hoops, making short videos, dancing with friends on the porch. He's all about appearances, and when he's bored, he turns me into a joke. "Hey, can you fix something?" he asks, waving a notebook. "If it helps, I'll try," I reply. "Just kidding, the only thing you fix is cleaning mix, right?" His friends laugh. I smile too. Not because I find it funny, but because smiling is sometimes easier than explaining the pain. He has this uncrowned princely air, fawned over by everyone. Mrs. Miller chases his schedule, personal trainer, guitar lessons, dinner with important colleagues. Mr. Miller almost always on the phone, signs checks, talks business, and disappears through the glass door. Ethan's routine consists of lots of screens and little listening. His room resembles a store, sneakers lined up, T-shirts folded in columns, shelves with small trophies, and a row of energy drink cans. On his desk, his physics notebook has almost no used pages. His notebook for videos and drawings is full, and when someone brings up the subject of studying, his response comes sharply. "Physics? For what? I already know gravity. It's what wears me down." He blurts out the sentence, gives a crooked smile, and leaves. It's his way of running away from what he doesn't understand. Now, me, I wake up before the sun. I live 40 minutes away, in a simple studio apartment near Pico Boulevard. My 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, sleeps with her arm thrown over my neck, and I always spend a minute looking at her face before getting up. I think, stay strong and calm. I put on coffee, pack her lunch, leave a note on the fridge magnet. I'll be back at 6. If you need me, Donna Lucia is at door 12. I tie up my hair, put on my uniform, and choose the least tiring sneakers. I take 2 buses. On the first, I have a view of the city waking up. On the second, I close my eyes and mentally review the day's list. Bedrooms, bathrooms, living room, silverware, laundry. When I arrive at the mansion, the gate recognizes my voice. The house smells of fresh flowers and wax. I enter and become the wind. I slip behind conversations, dodge meetings, pick up glasses without making a sound. I'm good at being silent. Mrs. Miller is always elegant, her hair tied back, her perfume light and lingering. She speaks to me politely, but from a distance, like someone speaking to the rain through a window. "Good morning. Please keep the flowers in the hall lower." "Yes, ma'am." She's always worried about the family's image. Events, photos, invitations. The house is the backdrop. Everything needs to be perfect, and I do my best to make it so, even though I know that perfection means superficial shine. My world and Ethan's intersect in the hallways. He runs past, I clean past. He teases, I breathe. He laughs, I count to 3. "You spilled some juice, Ethan," I say, showing him the cloth. "Good thing you're here, then," he replies, without even looking. There are days when it's all too much. I feel like saying, I'm not just this. I remember my old college notebooks, the physics I loved, the exercises I used to solve at night, the life that was so overwhelming until I dropped out of college. But I swallow it because rent can't wait, the uniform won't iron itself, and so fear needs all of me. The phone rang mid-morning as I was changing the flowers in the hall. The sound cut through the entire mansion, thin and urgent. Mrs. Miller answered on speakerphone because her hands shook when she was nervous. The principal's voice came out clear, dry, like someone who had said this many times before. "Mrs. Miller, we need to talk about Ethan." "Now?" she asked, adjusting her bun. "Now. His physics grades are critical. Red marks, unsubscribed reports, missed labs. If he doesn't pass his final exam, he'll be out of school." I froze, vase in hand. The water nearly spilled. The word out hung heavy in the air. Mrs. Miller stared at the floor, as if searching for a way out in the veins of the marble. "Out," she repeated in disbelief. "But this is an elite school." "Exactly. We have rules," said the principal. "Recovery is in 2 weeks. You need significant, real improvement, not just appearances." The silence that followed hurt. I heard my own heartbeat in my ear, the way it does when you feel like something big has just begun. Mrs. Miller ended the call with a hollow, "Thank you," and stood there, holding her phone as if it were something dangerous. "Is everything okay, Mum?" I asked softly. She bit her lip, trying to piece together the pose. "The school," her voice trailed off. "The school will expel Ethan if he doesn't pass physics." I took a deep breath. The scent of flowers came along with the memory of my old notebooks. Physics. The weight of the word was familiar. I tucked the memory away in my pocket and continued with the vase, because that was what I knew how to do when life threatened to collapse. Keep going. In the afternoon, the gate opened and the Tesla drove in too quickly. Ethan came down, throwing his backpack on the couch, as usual. "What's that look on your face?" he asked his mother, laughing awkwardly. "The principal called," she said firmly, bluntly. "You're about to be expelled." He gave a short, nervous laugh. "Exaggeration. Everyone fails physics." "Oh, not your way." Mrs. Miller crossed her arms. "Red papers, unsubmitted reports, warnings. It's over, Ethan. Either you pass the remedial exam or you drop out of school." He raised his voice, as if trying to drown out his fear with noise. "So what? I'll change schools." "No." Her voice returned low and dangerous. "You're going to face what you started." I pretended to straighten the cushions, but I was there, all of me, listening. Ethan saw me and aimed his anger where it was easiest. "Are you happy, Miss Mop?" he spat. "And will you be able to call me expelled when you sweep my room?" I took a breath, counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. "Ethan," his mother cut him off. "Enough. Sit down." "I'm not going to sit down and listen to a lecture," he replied, already walking away. "Yes, you will." She pointed to the armchair. "And now?" He sat down, not because he wanted to, but because her voice gave him no choice. His face showed a fear he pretended not to have, the kind that makes us prefer to be a joke rather than admit we don't understand. "Remediation is in 2 weeks, Mrs. Miller said. "I've already called 2 teachers. They're coming tomorrow." "Great," he scoffed. "More people to talk tough and call me stupid in the process." "No one will call you stupid," she said, taking a deep breath. "But someone will teach you, and you will learn." He looked away from me, because it was easier to attack someone who didn't fight back. "And you," he jerked his chin in my direction, "are you going to bring them water so they don't miss their throats?" I preferred silence. Silence, sometimes, is what protects us from breaking down, but inside, I held back the feeling that history had turned a corner. Mrs. Miller delivered on her promise. She filled the schedule with teachers, one after another, morning, afternoon, and evening, each with a different approach, all in the same rush to save in 2 weeks what had been ignored for months. The first one arrived in a suit and briefcase, smelling of a new pen. He opened a notebook, showed graphs, and said, "Kinematics is simple if you master the mathematical language." Ethan yawned loudly, stretching his legs out on the couch. "Can you speak English?" he laughed. "I'm not a robot," the professor continued, all seriousness, but Ethan's gaze had already left. Meanwhile, I was dusting, trying not to breathe too deeply. The man left after an hour. "He doesn't write it down. He doesn't ask questions," he told his mother. "It's difficult this way." The next day, a young woman came, all excited, with colourful pens and rocket-shaped post-its. "Physics is fun," she said, "but let's turn Newton's laws into dance." Ethan raised an eyebrow, took out his phone and filmed. "TikTok class here at home," he said, laughing. "First law, laziness at rest tends to stay at rest." The friends on the phone burst out laughing. The girl was embarrassed, but persisted. In the end, she left, deflated. "He sabotages me. I try, but he hides behind the joke." Others came. "The you spreadsheet man, the you formula king, the you storyteller." They all hit the same wall. Ethan didn't want to learn from anyone, and when I walked by, he aimed his anger where it hurt least. "Hey, do you want to teach me how to iron, or how to fail the test?" he said loudly, making his friends laugh over the speakerphone. I swallowed hard and continued, cloth in hand, heart heavy. The cold marble under my feet seemed to remind me, stay where you belong. But inside me, the place was no longer the same. One afternoon, his classmates came over to study. The study lasted 5 minutes. The rest was video, music, and laughter. I carried water and juice, collected cups, and tried to leave quickly. At the door, I heard, "Physics is useless, bro," said one. "It's useless. It's on the entrance exam," joked another. "I mean, it's on you." "If I get expelled, at least I get a vacation," Ethan added mockingly. They laughed. I didn't. I returned with the empty tray, but with the feeling of being a target again. As I passed the sofa, another one came. "Hey, Miss Mop, if gravity pulls everything down, why doesn't your mood rise?" "Ethan," Mrs. Miller called wearily from the stairs. "I'm just kidding, Mom," he said, without a hint of shame. That night, I found torn test papers with red lines in the trash. I pulled one out just to look. It read, "Explain Newton's second law with an example from everyday life." His answer, "Everyday life is boring," and a silly drawing of the teacher. It hurt, not because he made a mistake, but because he thought it was fun to make mistakes. On the third day of the marathon, the strictest teacher went head-to-head with the worst Ethan. "No cell phone," he ordered. "No patience," he replied. "Right. Resultant force is mass times acceleration." "You right. My hand is tired. Do you want to stay at school?" "I want class to end." The argument escalated. I was in the hallway folding sheets when I heard the scraping of a chair and the slamming of a door. The teacher stormed out, grabbed his briefcase, and spoke to Mrs. Miller. "Sorry, I'm not a babysitter." Ethan's bedroom door remained closed. His mother walked down the stairs slowly, as if carrying a piano on her back. She leaned against the kitchen island and asked the empty space, "What do I do?" It wasn't a question for me, but the whole house heard it. The next day, he brought 2 friends over. They said they were going to check it out. I vacuumed it. They barely noticed, until Ethan, already on automatic, using me as a joke, blurted out, "Hey, do you want to teach me the difference between static friction and your salary?" They both laughed. One spat juice on the table. I wiped it up immediately. The mixture of juice and laughter was worse than any mess. It stuck to my insides. "Excuse me," I said. "Can I take the glasses off so they don't fall?" "You may, cloth teacher," one of them said, bowing. I could have answered. I had an answer, but I kept quiet, because sometimes silence protects us from the right answer at the wrong time. When the friends left, Mrs. Miller called her son into the living room. "This ends today," she said firmly, but her voice trembled. "I won't watch you destroy your own life laughing." "Relax, Mom." He rolled his eyes. "Physics don't define anyone." "No," she countered, "but your attitude does. And for now, it says, I'm running, The afternoon was heavy, the sky grey, the wind banging against the windows as if it wanted to come in and mess everything up. I was in the living room, dusting the bookshelf, when I heard the notebook fly. Bam! It hit the couch and slid to the floor. Ethan collapsed with it, arms outstretched, his forehead sweaty. "Nobody understands this physics crap," he shouted, his voice breaking. I took a deep breath. It was the kind of sigh that comes from an ancient place, where we store our patience to use when the world provokes us. "I understand," I said simply. He looked up, ready to turn me into a joke. "You?" He laughed, a little late. I didn't answer. I walked over to the coffee table. There was a half-empty glass of water. The afternoon light filtered through the glass and traced the surface. I picked it up. "Come here," I said. "Just give me 2 minutes." He rolled his eyes, but came over. He sat on the edge of the couch, suspicious, still trying to find humor where there was none. "Look at the cup," I said. "If I let go, will it fall or float?" "Fall," he replied impatiently. "Gravity." "That's it," I agreed. "Now, if I push lightly and let go, what happens?" I pushed very little. The glass moved a little and then stopped. "Come on and stop," he said. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "Friction." "Good," he smiled. "The table holds, gravity pulls down, friction keeps it on the plane. Now think of it this way. The cup wants to keep doing what it's already doing. If it's still, it wants to stay still. If it's moving, it wants to keep moving. That's inertia, Newton's first law. It's not a difficult name. It's just the fancy way of saying the cup is stubborn." He bit his lip, not joking. I continued. I took a napkin and placed it under the glass, leaving a corner sticking out. "If I pull the napkin really quickly, what do you think will happen?" "Water will fall everywhere," he replied, his smile already returning. I pulled it out with a sharp jerk. The napkin came off. The glass barely moved. His eyes widened. "How?" "Inertia," I repeated calmly. "The glass wants to stay the way it was. The pull is quick. Friction doesn't have time to mess everything up. The table holds it underneath. Gravity helps keep it in place. If I pulled slowly, then I would knock it over." He looked at the glass, as if it was the first time he had seen a glass. "Okay, so what?" He tried to regain his mockery. "The test won't ask about the napkin." "But you're going to ask about that," I pointed to the scene. "You're going to ask why one thing stops and another keeps going. Why an object needs force to change what it's doing. You're going to ask what happens if you're on a skateboard and hit the rock. Your body wants to keep going, but the board stops. That's why you fly." He leaned forward, interested without admitting it, on the skateboard. He repeated softly. "Now the second law," I said, grabbing a basketball from the corner. "Force is mass times acceleration. If I push the ball slowly, it goes slowly. If I push hard, it shoots up. If the ball is heavier, I need more force to give it the same acceleration." I pushed slowly, then I pushed hard. The ball hit the baseboard and bounced back gently. "Think of your dad's Tesla," I continued. "When he presses harder, the acceleration increases. When he presses lightly, it barely changes. And if a lot of people get in the car, larger mass, it needs more force to get away from the same spot." He gave a short, sincere smile, as if recognizing a truth that had always been there. "Okay," he murmured. "I understand that." I was quiet for a second, letting the idea sink in. "Third law," I said, raising my hand and patting the other. "Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You push the water back when you swim, and your body moves forward. The rocket pushes gases back, and it rises. You push the ground with your foot, and the ground pushes you back. That's why you walk." "Equal and opposite," he repeated, testing the phrase in his mouth. "Like when I jump, and the ground bounces back at me." "Exactly." Silence came, not the silence of humiliation, the good silence that comes when your head clicks. He looked at the notebook lying on the floor. Then he looked at me as if searching for a flaw that would justify his continued laughing, and he found none. I took a deep breath. I smelled the lemon scent of the still damp cloth in my hand. I put the cloth back on the tray and sat on the edge of the sofa, slightly slouched, like someone not used to sitting there. Because, before I cleaned this house, I almost finished college in physics, I said slowly. He raised his eyebrows. Mrs. Miller held her breath. Really? He whispered. Really? I said. I've always loved numbers, formulas, those things that seem difficult but explain the world. When I was younger, I'd spend hours staring at the sky and wondering why the moon doesn't fall. Then, when I entered community college, it felt like I'd found my home within myself. I worked during the day, studied at night. I'd arrive at class smelling like cleaning product, but my notebook smelled like dreams. He smiled discreetly from the corner of his mouth. And why did you stop? Mrs. Miller asked, without judgment in her voice. I looked at my hands. The nails were short. The index finger had a little bleach stain on it. Sophia, I replied, smiling, just saying her name. I got pregnant. Her father disappeared in the 3rd month. I tried to handle it all. Cleaning shifts, classes, internships, diapers, fevers. I slept for 2 hours, woke up to an alarm clock and guilt. One day, my boss called, either you choose work or you choose college. The college coordinator said almost the same thing, only with more beautiful words. I looked at Sophia, so small, and chose her. Ethan put his pencil down thoughtfully. It must have hurt. It hurt, I replied sincerely. But it hurt like falling off a skateboard and scraping your knee on the asphalt. It stings for days, but the pain didn't make me hate physics. I just moved. I kept my notebooks in a shoebox next to my bed. At night, when Sophia was asleep, I'd open a book, do an exercise, make a mistake, try again. The house was small, but my mind wandered far. Orbit, force, energy. I'd laugh to myself with a problem solved. It felt like the world fit on a sheet of paper. "Do you still have those notebooks?" he asked. "I do," I replied. "They're all scratched up with coffee stains and Sophia's drawings over the formulas. There's a rocket with a heart, and she wrote, 'From Mum to Heaven.' It's my invisible diploma." He didn't laugh. He respected, and that changed the size of the room. He swallowed. "I've made fun of you so many times." "I know," I said, without anger. "And I understand. We make fun when we're scared. I did that to myself many times. I'd say, 'I'm not a student anymore. I'm just the maid.' And when I repeated, 'just,' I'd cringe. Until one day, Sophia asked me, 'Mom, why do you say just?' I'm not just. I'm a mother. I'm a worker. I'm curious. And a part of me is, yes, the girl from physics. She didn't die. She just stayed quiet." Mrs. Miller stepped inside. "I had no idea," I said, with a sincerity I almost never saw there. "No one did," I said gently, "because I hid it too. It's easier to cover it up than to ask to be seen." Ethan played with the pen cap, not looking at me. "My mum's always saying I have everything and I don't appreciate it," he said quietly. "I thought that you didn't even know what this was. This isn't hard to understand." He smiled, pointing to the notebook. "The hard part is enduring what we feel when it seems like it's not going to work. Then our minds invent monsters. Physics isn't a monster, it's a flashlight. If we use it, we can see the way." He took a deep breath, as if putting out a fire inside. "I wanted to," he began, but stopped. "I wanted to apologize for everything. For the nicknames, for the jokes. A thank you in the future is worth more," I said fondly. "When you pass by, you say, 'Thank you.' And if one day you see someone as lost as you were, you explain it your way. That's the best apology." Mrs. Miller stepped into the room, still with the glow of someone who'd seen the scene, with the glass and napkin. She took a deep breath, tucked her hair behind her ear, and spoke as if deciding on a course of action. "Enough of this improvisation. You're going to be my son's tutor. Officially, I'll pay you for your time, for your preparation." He looked at Ethan. "And you, Ethan, will listen." He sat up straight on the sofa, startled. "With her? Impossible." His voice was loud, but weak inside. "Possible and necessary," she said firmly. "Either learn from her or change schools." The silence fell heavily. I held the cloth with one hand and the notebook with the other, in the middle of that corridor between what I had always been then and what I could begin to be. "Mom, you don't need to," I began instinctively. "Yes, you do." She interrupted me, gentle and resolute. "You found the language he understands. That's worth it, and I'll pay what it's worth." Ethan tried the last blow. "Mom, she's the—" "Don't say just," she raised her finger, and her eyes burned. "She's the one who gave you a fresh start at school, with half a dozen examples that no expert gave you. Your pride won't teach you physics." He took a deep breath. Then he looked down at the notebook, where it said, "Inertia is the stubbornness of things." The corner of his mouth twitched, unsure whether to laugh or swallow. "Okay," he grumbled. "I'll try." "Don't try," I said softly. "You practice. Trying gives up easily. Practice stays." Mrs. Miller opened her purse and took out a pad of checks, but thought better of it and put it away. She took out her cell phone. "Message me your availability, what materials you need, and your hourly rate," he said. "And if you accept, I want to add one thing, an approval bonus." My chest warmed. Words like that don't usually knock on my door. "I accept," I replied, my voice feeling firmer than the rest of my body, "but on 3 conditions." They looked at me, surprised. I continued. "First, studying happens without humiliation. There's no such thing as a silly question." Fair enough," she said. "Second, we use examples from Ethan's world. Skateboarding, cars, sound systems. If he can't see, he can't learn." "Deal," he grumbled, but without irony. Third, a strict schedule. Start on time. No cell phones, no friends. If you're late, make up. If you're absent, excuse yourself. Seriously. Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but his mother was quicker. "Signed," he said, as if stamping an invisible contract. She turned to me, her face lighter. "Thank you for accepting. I should have listened to you sooner, or at least listened to you sooner. Seen. It's okay," I said, and for the first time, it was true. Ethan pulled the notebook closer, ran his hand over the crumpled cover, and let out a sigh that I understood, the sigh of someone who knows it will hurt, but that it might work out. "So, when do we start?" he asked quietly. I smiled. "Now. 20 minutes of review and an exercise that suits you. Which one?" he wanted to know. "Jump the backyard ramp without flying like a comet," I replied. "We'll calculate force, momentum, and contact time. If you understand the fall, you understand half the test." He actually laughed. Small, embarrassed, but he laughed. Mrs. Miller stood in the doorway, looking at us both, as if she had seen a bridge appear where before there had been only a river. "If you need a snack, I'll make it," she said, almost joking. "Today I'm the assistant. We scheduled classes every late afternoon. I placed a new notebook, simple pens, a basketball, and his skateboard leaning against the wall on the table. I wrote at the top, routine. Below, 20 minutes of warm-up, 30 minutes of theory with examples, 20 minutes of exercises. It looked good on paper. In real life, it was something else. "Shall we begin?" I asked calmly. "You begin," he said, closing half the notebook with his hand. I talked about forces on an inclined plane using the backyard ramp. I drew arrows, tilted a book to make a mountain, and rolled a pen to make a block. He yawned. "I'm sleepy." "Then take a deep breath and wash your face," I asked. We'll continue. I thought the physics tutor knew miracles, he murmured, getting up slowly. He returned unhurriedly, leaving his phone beside him. The screen lit up. Notification. Another. And another. He blinked at the device as if the light was calling his name. No cell phones, remember. I was firm, but not argumentative. You're not a real teacher. He cut me off. A real teacher is missed. Then consider it brain fog if you keep looking at the screen, I replied calmly. We need attention to build. He laughed mockingly and turned his face away. It hurt inside, but I stayed where I was. I started from scratch. I talked about weight loss, about normality, about friction. He interrupted. Friction is you insisting on me. I let it go. I picked up the basketball. Throw it to me. Weak. He threw it lightly. The ball almost didn't come. Now hard. He threw it hard. I caught it with both hands and almost missed. Power changes what the ball does, he said. That's the point. The point is, I'm going to get sent off, he spat, irritated. Oh, and your ball isn't going to save me. The sentence sank like glass into my chest. I thought of Sophia at the kitchen table, memorizing multiplication tables with post-it notes. I thought of myself, years ago, collapsing on the couch after work and opening a book even though my eyes were burning. I could have given up, but I had promised myself I wouldn't shut up. Try an exercise, just one, I asked. Then you can complain. Okay, the easiest one, he teased. I wrote, a block rolls down a smooth, inclined plane. What forces act? What happens to the velocity? He stared, silent. His silence this time wasn't one of respect. It was a wall, you know, I said quietly. I don't know. He crossed his arms. I don't know, and I won't know in 2 weeks. I went back to the drawing. I spoke slowly. Made the arrows. Just 2. Weight and normal. He grumbled. You talk like I'm 5. And you sabotage like I'm 3. It came out without me planning. I took a breath. Sorry, let's go again. He stared at me for a while, as if testing my patience. Then he slammed the notebook shut. That's enough for today. I held onto the edge of the table to keep my anger from rising. Come when time's up. 20 minutes left. I'll miss it then. He stood up. Fake teacher. He left. The door slammed. I stared at the crooked drawing of the inclined plane, with the arrows telling me to continue. Mrs. Miller appeared in the hallway. Unfortunately, having heard everything, I just said, I'll try again tomorrow. Thank you, she replied, with a weariness that couldn't be put into words. The next day, same time, I arrived early, moved the table to the window, and let in some light. I swapped pens for tape and used the floor as a chalkboard. I taped arrows, wrote weight, normal, frictional force. He came in and laughed. Did it become a daycare center? It's become a laboratory, I replied. Come, step here. I asked him to stand on a piece of paper with ground written on it. I gently pushed his shoulder. Do you feel me pushing you? Huh, now push the ground with your foot. Okay, who pushed you back? The ground, action and reaction. Third law. He scratched his head. He laughed at himself, but continued to look for escape. It doesn't fall that way. No, I agreed, but it does fall that way inside. If you can see it in your head, you write it on paper the way the teacher wants. The test is just the translation. He took a deep breath, almost smug. His cell phone rang. I reached out. 30 minutes without him. Are you going to confiscate it? I'll protect your focus. He handed it over, but with the look of someone doing me a favor. 10 minutes later, he yawned. I'm tired. Take off your shirt, stretch, drink some water, come back, I instructed. The brain is also a muscle. He returned, but brought his weapons, jokes, faces, and silences that were too long. With every mockery, I responded with an example. With every I don't know, I showed a scene from the day. With every yawn, a guided breath. Do you like losing? I asked lightly. I like not caring, he replied roughly. That's fear in disguise. You don't know me. I know myself, and I've hidden like that too. He looked at me strangely, as if he recognized the word fear on his own clothes. But he didn't give in. On the third day, it rained. The room turned grey. I brought 2 notebook springs, 2 small weights, and a ruler. I set up an experiment on the table. "Is this a class or a science fair?" he scoffed. "It's a bridge," I replied. "You take one end, I'll take the other." I told him to pull slowly, then quickly. I showed him that force changes acceleration, that contact time changes momentum, that slowing down over longer periods of time hurts less, like when the curved ramp hugs at the skateboard. He almost smiled. Almost. A minute later, the defense returned. "You explain it beautifully, but I'm bad." "You're trainable," I corrected. "Bad is the one who gives up before trying properly." He was silent. The urge to cry came. Not for me, for him. I held it back. I remembered Sophia. "Mom, when I make a mistake, I try again, okay?" I remembered my father when I was little. Calmness is a tool. I used both memories like pliers. On the 4th day, I invited him into the backyard. The rain had gone. The ground still damp. I brought my skateboard. "Let's measure your fall," I suggested. "You go down slowly, then a little faster. I'll time it, and we'll estimate the acceleration." "Do you want me to fall?" "I want you to notice what you already know with your body." He came down, first laughing, then focused. The time spent on the phone made clear differences. We returned to the table and dialed with a simple formula. For the first time, he wrote without complaining. After 3 lines, he frowned again. It won't work. Why? Because I'm not you." He threw the pen. "You see things. I only see paper and scolding." I took a breath. I spoke softly. "You are you. Your way of seeing things may be different, and that's good. We'll find a way. But you need to hold my hand." He stood there, gripping the edge of the table. His eyes shone with anger and exhaustion. "I'm scared," he said, almost voiceless. I had a strong urge to hug him. I didn't hug him. I stayed. "Fear goes with it," I said. "He just doesn't drive." He nodded. The light from the window fell on his face, and I saw a boy, not the laughing character. Still, the defenses returned, like a final thorn. "If I fail, everyone will laugh. If you try, I'll applaud," I replied. "And if you pass, you applaud yourself." The first few classes were like this: stumbles, mocking slaps, persistent patience, examples I pulled from the pocket of my heart. It hurt, but I stuck with it. At the end of the week, he closed the notebook. Tired. "I'll come tomorrow," he said, without looking at me. "But I don't promise anything." "Promise presence," I replied. "We'll build the rest." I figured the path to Ethan's head went through his body, so I went that way. Earlier in the week, I took my skateboard to the center of the room and drew 2 large arrows on the floor with tape, force and movement. "Climb up and give it a light push," I asked. "In here?" He laughed. "Trust me. I'll hold the table. You hold the focus." He pushed slowly. The board moved a little. Then he gave it a bigger push. The board came to life. "See the difference?" I asked. "Force changes acceleration," he replied, almost without thinking. "That's it. Second law." I switched to the video game. I picked up the controller and left the racing game on the practice screen. "Look at the tachometer. When you step on it, the RPM goes up. Chemical energy becomes mechanical energy. If you brake, some of it turns into heat. Energy doesn't disappear. It changes clothes." "Conservation of energy," he said, testing his words. "Okay, makes sense." The next day, I used his phone, with permission and without notifications. I opened the tuner app and clapped, "See the bar. That's frequency. Sound is a wave. The faster it vibrates, the higher the pitch. Wi-Fi, radio, microwaves, all waves. So even my headphones speak physics all the time." He laughed, not at me, at the pleasant shock of understanding. His laughter now filled the room. We started taking real notes. I made a new notebook, Physics in Ethan's Life. First page, skateboard, force, friction, momentum. Second, video games, energy, power, work. Third, cell phone, waves, frequency, amplitude. Each idea had a drawing, a little arrow, a simple sentence. The big house seemed smaller when we built this map. Quick exercise, I said one afternoon. You left the gate and reached the corner in 20 seconds. That's 80 meters. What's the average speed? He did the math himself, tongue between his teeth, like a child finding a puzzle piece. 4 meters per second, he said, looking up. I got it right, didn't I? You got it. He smiled with all his teeth, and I wrote that smile in my heart. The locks also came. In the school lab, he remembered his classmates, laughter, and his hand trembled on the pen. I pulled him back. Inhale, exhale. Remember the glass, the napkin. You know how to translate. One afternoon, it was raining and the window was rattling. I brought a towel, 2 bottles of water, and a boiled egg. Yes, an egg. I covered the table with a cloth. Today is about contact time, I explained. If the egg falls on the cloth follows it and increases the time. Less impact. If it falls directly on the countertop, it breaks. Mom will kill me if it breaks, he joked, already paying attention. That's why it's a boiled egg. I released it in the same way on both. On the top, a dry tap. On the cloth, a soft shh. His eyes widened. Just like the curved half-pipe ramp, it holds the descent. That's it. Impulse. Force times time. The force that hurts decreases as time increases. We wrote together. He asked for more examples. I gave them. He stopped looking at the clock. I stopped counting to 3 inside. The room breathed. Mrs. Miller would sometimes pass by the door and sit quietly, just listening. One time, she came in with sandwiches. Break, he said. Even brains need bread. Ethan laughed. Mom, you're disrupting the dynamic. I am fueling the dynamic, she replied, happy to be the butt of a good joke. At the end of the week, I brought a simple printed schedule with little squares to color. Each filled square is a completed workout. I'm not a child, he grumbled reflexively. Neither do I smiled, but my brain loves to see progress. He colored the first square with exaggerated care. On the 3rd day, he texted me at 10 p.m. I did an average speed exercise, 3.2 miss. Good evening. It took me a while to respond because I cried a little beforehand. I wrote, good evening, proud of the training. On Saturday, I took the skateboard out into the backyard and we timed a descent. We calculated approximate acceleration with a ruler and tape measure. He got the first calculation wrong, but the second one right. I'm not a genius, he said, scratching his head. I didn't ask for genius, I replied. I asked for training. On Sunday, I was leaving when he ran to the door. Wait. He opened his notebook and showed me a neat little calculation. Weighted average of 3 sections, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds. Did I get it right? I checked slowly, building suspense. Acer. I drew out the syllable. 2. He burst into a quick, shy smile as which he quickly erased to maintain his poise. Okay, thanks. He feigned indifference, but his step skipped 0.5 centimeter. There, in that leap, I saw the birth of the student no one believed existed. It wasn't a miracle. It was work. It was him. The days passed, and then the day of recovery arrived. The house dawned quieter than usual. I made stronger coffee, left a cereal bar on the table, and tidied up his notebook with the colorful schedule. Ethan came downstairs with his backpack on his back and sweaty hands. I'm shaking, he confessed, without hiding it. Shaking is energy. We transform it, I replied. Breathe with me. We took 3 slow breaths. He repeated the drill. Who's pushing who? What wants to keep going? Where's the friction? In the car, I spoke softly. Remember the skateboard fall. Same rule. If you get stuck on a question, play it out in your head. Simple arrows. Then write beautifully. He looked out the window, swallowed hard and tried a smile. If I pass, you get he thought, a milkshake with me. Deal, I joked. Vanilla, with physics. At school, the principal was waiting in the hallway, serious but fair. Good luck, Ethan, he said. You know more than you think. He entered the room. The door closed. I sat in a chair in the hall, hands clasped in my lap, as if praying wordlessly. Mrs. Miller arrived 5 minutes later, her heart in her throat. She sat next to me. Thank you for bringing him here, she whispered. He walked, I replied. Time became a rubber band. Teachers came and went with tests in folders. The hallway clock ticked, 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 and each tick seemed to ask, what now? I remembered every practice, the egg, the napkin, the ramp. I remembered the first smile without mockery. I remembered the message at 10 p.m. The door opened. Ethan walked out, his face flushed but his jaw set. So, his mother asked. I did everything, he said. There was one about energy that almost got me. Then I thought about the car brakes. I wrote that thing about energy changing clothes. Conservation, I finished. That's it. Then my head cleared. Second part tomorrow, the director announced. Today was kinematics. Tomorrow, Newton's laws and energy. On the way out, I said, rest today. No marathons. Your brain needs to consolidate. Translation, pizza, he ventured. Translation, pizza. In the evening, I received another message. I reviewed it for 30 minutes. Don't panic. Good night, I replied. Good. Good night. Day 2. Same breath, same hallway, same ticking of the clock. When the door opened, he didn't wait for anyone to ask. I remembered the napkin, he said, laughing nervously. A similar question came up. Why does a trick work? I mentioned inertia, small friction in a short time. What about action and reaction? I asked. I wrote, who pushes whom? He smiled. Just like you say. The principal collected the tests, exchanged a few words with the coordinator, and called us into her office. I felt the floor shake like a skateboard ramp. Mrs. Miller squeezed my hand without realizing it. Result. The director said, looking at the screen, approved. Silence. Then air. He outdid himself. He won't be expelled. Mrs. Miller cried a cry I'd never seen from her before, short and sincere. She hugged her son. I stood a step back, wanting to applaud but afraid to disturb. Ethan broke free from the embrace and came to me. He paused for a second, searching for the right word. Then he said, in the most beautiful way I've ever heard, thank you, teacher. The word hit my chest like a medal, the kind that isn't made of metal but weighs just as much. I took a breath, held back my tears, and replied, congratulations, student. In the parking lot, he raised his arms as if crossing the finish line. Milkshake, he asked, laughing. Milkshake, I confirmed. We drove home with the windows open and the wind blowing like music. The mansion, which had always been a backdrop, now seemed like a place of living people. I looked up at the Los Angeles sky and thought of the girl I'd been, of the stained notebooks, of Sophia drawing rockets. I also thought of the boy who laughed at me and now laughed with me. After my recovery, the house was no longer the same. The silence that had once been heavy became a pause of rest, not contempt. Ethan no longer came down the stairs laughing at me. He came down with his notebook in hand. Hey, there's a kinetic energy exercise, he called to me, a little shyly. Can you review it with me? I'd stop, dry my hands on the cloth, and sit beside him. Sure. Show me what you've already tried. And he'd show me, unafraid of making mistakes. One day, we were at the kitchen table, and he said something that made me gasp. You know, I don't laugh at you anymore because I realized I was laughing at myself, at my fear. I looked at him and didn't need to say anything. I just squeezed his shoulder. Claire changed too. She wasn't just my boss. She became almost a friend. She'd bring me coffee when I studied with Ethan, strike up conversations. "You have the patience of a lifetime," she once said. "I wouldn't have been able to do it." "Patience is practice," I replied, "just like physics." She laughed sincerely. And then came Richard, the father, that man who always seemed like part of the expensive furniture in the house, distant, busy, serious. One night, after dinner, he asked me to stay a while. Ethan and Claire had already gone upstairs. "I heard about what you did," he said, taking off his glasses. "Not only did you teach my son, but you showed him discipline and confidence. It took me a while to realize the value of that." I stood, unsure whether to say thank you or it was nothing. He continued, "I want to offer you something, a scholarship, to finish your physics degree. You deserve it." My entire body trembled. I clutched the cloth in my hand as if it were my anchor. "Sir, I don't even know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," he said firmly, but with a rare glint in his eyes. "Use it. You're not just the maid, you're someone who changed destinies." I returned home that night feeling like the world had gotten bigger. Sophia hugged me at the door, smelling of cheap shampoo and the warmth of a child. I told her the news. She smiled brightly. "And so now you're going to be a real teacher?" she asked. I smiled back. I always was. All I needed was the diploma. Ethan, Claire, Richard, even the mansion. They've all changed. But deep down, the one who's changed the most is me. Because I learned that being seen wasn't a matter of title, but of the courage to remain silent. In that place where I was invisible, I became a bridge between laughter and respect, between fear and learning, between just and someone. End of story.